And welcome to Spore War After the War, our weekly analysis and retrospective on the Spore War Actual Play series. Hopefully that you've just been watching and are now joining us for the After the War session. My name is Jason Collins. I am a freelance comic book writer, tabletop role-playing game designer, actual play producer and streamer, and I am producing the Spore War series, and you can find links to my work, the other actual plays I participated in, and my comic book Thistle on my link tree at digital_Collins. And I am pleased to introduce to you the Gamerunner for Spore War, Seneschal.
Hi, everyone.
So, we just are coming off of a marathon session of Spore War, which was Prelude 3, Part 3. Part 3, because we couldn't quite wrap it all up in 2 as we've done for the other ones. And
Not
even with Part 3, it still required an extended session to get it in. And so hopefully the audience had the stamina to stick with it all, or they may have to come back and watch it on multiple viewings to get through everything that we had in there, because there was a lot that happened. And so fresh off of the recording for you, fresh off the session for the players, I'm just gonna let you ad lib for a bit and just freewheel for a bit and tell me what you're thinking right now.
You've never done that before. You've never left me unsupervised, but I will happily comment. I really enjoyed it. There are a couple of things I did that were mistakes, and there are a couple of things the players did that were I provided some light guidance in terms of what might happen if they took a particular course of action. But for the most part, they went into it prepared. They went into it with a plan, and it could have gone disastrously if they hadn't. They were facing some overwhelming forces, but the way that this particular combat was designed was that there were lots of opportunities to thin out the numbers of the opposition or to have them behave in suboptimal ways. And there were some clues to that, I think, I laid in the reactions of the NPCs when they first entered combat as to what was likely to unfold. But regardless, it was a dangerous encounter, and Banda definitely came close to death. There were moments where it could have gone way differently. The players had some unlucky rolls, but the opponents, the adversaries, really had some moments where they suffered from bad luck, and the players' decisions optimized really created a win condition that ended up playing out. And when they forced the confrontation with Lord Valthorn at the end, I think that was the right move. But it was, I tried to put some moral tests in as well to see what they would do.
And we'll talk about that in a moment, because there were some moral, in the moment, fast conversations about what lines they would and wouldn't cross, which we have talked about in a couple of the preceding After the War sessions leading up to this one, because I had asked those questions as well. What will happen, and will they confront those moments when they arrive, which they had to do in this session. And just to quickly touch point on the Banda coming close to death. I mean, Banda was basically in the dying condition for a brief moment. Stephen, playing as Toad, had to use lay on hands twice to keep Toad in the fight, and Gwen as Briala was saved by a critical miss near the end as well, which I think was saved by a critical miss and just outside the range of a fireball spell that went off in the middle of the fight as well. So a couple of just lucky breaks for Briala as well. Both of those characters could have easily been in the same state had the dice gone a different way.
Briala also had the tactical awareness to realize she was more than 20 feet away from the center of the fireball.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I could have actually done that differently in the sense that the center didn't have to be at the floor. And
correct.
Right? But I wanted to reward her tactical sense, and there really was, in the moment it could have gone that way. But nonetheless, you're right. Like there were moments where there was real potential for lethality.
And that's a great, just a quick segue as well, as a reminder for the game masters watching that that when using tactical maps, as we've been doing with the Roll20 setup, it's so easy to fall into the two-dimensional thinking and to just think of everything as being floor up or wall out, and not thinking about the three-dimensional space, and especially when characters are flying, which can be difficult to represent on the two-dimensional map of Roll20, to remember positioning wise where the other characters are. And as a game master, if your enemies are intelligent enough to take full advantage of their environment, we'll try and remember those things as well, for sure. Not to, like, as you say, go out of your way to punish your players, or to catch them in a gotcha, but just to remind players of the lethality, and that the spells can have XY axis can go in multiple directions, right? So it's just good to remember that as well.
Yeah. That moment was a great example of just a momentary decision on my part as to, a couple times I've already said no to Briala on particular ways that spells would work that, it was going a little bit beyond what the spell description was. This was a situation where it either could have been, pointed at the floor, or, 15 feet up, and it would have got her. But because she was alert, because of the circumstances, I just made a decision that's fine.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Final confrontation, final conflict, final moments is really how I would sum up this final Prelude episode, right? And let off the session with that culmination or finalization of that tactical plan that they laid out, which they were still finalizing in the final moments. I really appreciated that they chose to take that moment to gear up and to make sure that they had the additional spells, potions, things that would help, and that allowed you to have a quick encounter prior to this final setup, for them to have both a bit of a connection point with some uncertain allies, but also to reveal that they have support in the city that they perhaps didn't fully realize was there.
Yeah. The two patrons that remain to them are genuinely good people, and this isn't a spoiler, because by the time the next session starts, they will have had a chance, that is, the player characters will have had a chance to review some of Val Thorin's records, which we didn't have time to do in the session. But he was doing opposition research on the commander and Serthal, the merchant. Serthal is actually a lantern bearer, a local agent of an underground organization that specifically wards against demonic corruption and other corruption of Keonan. They're a traditional elven faction or a secret society that has some interactions with the court, but also are independent. And so all along, he's been looking as the player characters as a resource that he can use. And he's not a character from the Adventure Path. He's one of my own devising, but I thought it important that the commander and the patrons, I originally gave them options to work with. Most of them were either useless or actually malicious.
Yes.
But those two, I think, will continue to be touch points within the campaign.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it was great that they were, like I said, they get to the magic shop and the lights are on upstairs, and that's because they're aware of what's happening on this particular night, and making their own steps to putting things in place themselves to be ready for whatever the fallout or the consequences will be, especially if these guardians of Green Gold were to fail or to not act in time, even, right? So I like that scene. I thought that was a nice prelude, and it was a nice nice kind of setup, and to remind them that now these relationships they formed, where they can draw upon those relationships for help when they need them.
I really am glad those scenes with those two have worked out the way that I sort of hoped they would. And the player characters engaged with them in ways that are amusing to me. I like Briala's speculation as to what the nature of the relationship between the commander and Serthal are.
Yes.
It's largely off screen, but it's delightful to have players using their own imagination in parallel to my own, and sort of creating this living world with these living characters.
It was really good, and it was a nice little role play moment, and a nice, and again, it made the world just more fleshed out. That not just the fact that these specific non-player characters exist, not just that they are patrons that you've introduced, or that they have a story function that the player that serves the players in terms of their characters, but it makes them real and lived in, and that they live in the city and they've got their own lives and their own relationships and their own hopes and aspirations that they're after. I really like that because it makes Green Gold much more real and warm, and it has depth to it. And I think, as we know, how the adventure path starts as coming up makes that starting even more impactful when the
They're invested in Green Gold for sure.
Yeah.
I before we go on from that conversation though, the one thing that I was really proud of and that I thought went off really well, you can tell me if you disagree, the moment where the commander was willing to go with them.
Yes.
And Sir Thal gave a glance.
Yes. Yep. Which again speaks to that risk reward and the fact that these characters have their own motivations. And is this the moment that the commander's like, I'm willing to risk everything that we've worked towards up to this point to help these individuals who, while they're not new in the sense that we know there's been probably a few years that have passed in terms of time leading up to through these preludes, they're still relatively new compared to the extensive relationships that someone like the commander would have formed in the city, and the commander's responsibility to not just carelessly throw their life away or endanger themselves even needlessly, even if they're not in danger of dying, endanger themselves for the sake of this one group or this one moment. But it was really good because that's where it's real characters making real decisions about what they want to do and how it affects those around them as well. No different than the player characters making decisions and the impact that it has to the fellow party. The NPCs have that same type of relationships, and it makes it much more real and welcoming. So I like that.
It was also mechanically necessary because the commander would, by his nature, have wanted to intervene.
Absolutely.
But also, I didn't want him there because
that's right.
He's going to really change that encounter, and he's then going on the adventure rather than the player characters, as we've talked about before.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. Great use of skills and spells, and not just their pre-planning in terms of the approach they were going to take, but using all of their abilities to try and enact change. And as you say, the initial scene, the initial reveal and revelation to the assembled in the manor house, where they were using all of their other attributes before they led off into combat. Really showcase some of the abilities of the characters and their opportunity to affect change without having to draw a blade or cast a spell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they used all of their resources wisely. I think in the end, it was and all of them did. They all really performed really really well.
Absolutely. So you said you felt like some things went well and some things made mistakes. Was that in relation to the extended combat scene, or just the pacing of what you had set up for this final session?
Oh, just a couple of things. The pacing, I don't beat myself up too much about pacing. You do the best you can, but the issue was, rather at the beginning, if they had just in a robotic tone gone, "This is our plan," we would have gotten into the combat sooner. But they were enjoying it.
Yes.
They were enjoying role-playing, the planning on screen. And so I didn't want to cut that short, and I knew the combat was going to take a while. I knew an hour before we were going to run over. And we had some technical issues. Everyone had technical issues, it seems.
That's right.
Today. So that's slowed our start as well. You were ready, actually, earlier than anyone with all the technical stuff. And as you know, I had some glitches that I needed to end up involving another computer on. These things happen. I'm not too worried about the pacing of things. I do the best I can, and if we go over, we go to another session, or this is the one time we've actually had the players buy into running long. It worked out for everyone, I think.
Yeah.
There are things I lose track of in combat. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I don't like that kind of clumsiness. But it comes with the territory. The GM always has the most moving pieces to keep track of.
That's right. And that's a good reminder for game masters watching, even not even for the complexity of an actual play, but even just for the home table, that you need to transfer ownership and share responsibility with the players to make sure they know the aspects of their own characters. You and I have discussed this over the years with our home table, with different players we've had at the home table over time, where some people just come prepared and some people don't, or some people just aren't good at remembering and keeping track of the full capabilities of what they can do. And we've even had this at the home table, which extends to the actual play as well, being ready on your turn and being ready to go and being able to keep the turns moving as quickly as you can for that reason. Because even then there can be a bit of second guessing or a bit of a do-over. Even Steven, right at the very, very beginning as the encounter started, asked for a quick do-over because wanted to approach things in a different way or maybe use a different ability. But that's all part of just not relying on the game master or the game runner to being the one that's solely responsible to remember all those moving pieces, and that the players need to come prepared to help, because it is as we've talked about, a collaborative effort. Whether it's playing a game or telling a story, it requires that collaboration, and the best ones, whether they're actual plays or just home tables, always have a strong sense of ownership by the players in contributing, ensuring that everyone else is having a good time and that it's not dragging on.
Yeah, I am not as strong as I would like to be with the 2E rules. I am rusty with Roll20 and never was an advanced user. There are things that I'm not too fussed about. I have strengths and weaknesses like any GM, and I just try to recognize them. But the exactly what you say, like when the players are posting the skills they're using in the chat, so I don't have to look things up.
Absolutely.
When they know what they're going to do on their turn, or at least have a rough sense, and if they have to adjust, that's fine. But they all did a great job of mastering their part of the storytelling, and playing their characters well. I'm really pleased.
I am too, and players like Lex and that have taken time to do a little bit of custom work on Roll20 to make the sheet more flexible and more customizable, and to provide a bit more added detail, so that every time we're using the chat feature that we're sharing for the audience, that they're getting to see the full description of these abilities and spells and combat maneuvers. Which I really appreciate as well, because I think that makes a better experience for the audience watching, and especially when you're just doing a round by round, a bit of a round by round combat session. At least there's a bit of a visual aid to help along the way as well. So it's been really good. Quite a great reveal with the demonologist, and I guess spoilers in the sense that for those that haven't watched Prelude 3 Part 3 yet, there is a demonologist present, and as we can figure out from that description of their title, that they summon demons as part of their skill set. But it was a really great reveal of what happened to the demonologist when the demonologist goes down, because it gave everybody a pause, and it was a lot of fun to sort of like, oh, we jumped that hurdle. We're past that now. We're good. And then throwing the players a bit of a surprise in terms of like, well, that encounter is not quite finished yet, and here's why. I thought that was a lot of fun. I quite enjoyed that as well. Absolutely.
I did too. Yeah, no, it was good. I had that plan for a while, and I played a little fast and loose with what the demonologist could do on
Of course.
death. But the payoff was totally worth it, and it was not. The neat thing about that was, of course, the demon that peeled itself out of the corpse of the demonologist was not under any control or direction.
Yes.
Which I do enjoy having suboptimal things happen for adversaries as well, right?
Yes.
And that fed into my call it a fetish.
You also granted Lex's wish. Lex said out loud, "I want some chaos." Okay. Yep. Chaos it is, and that's what happens. And there was still a guardsman on the floor, which was the closest available target, preventing the PCs from or helping the PCs avoid one more demonic encounter, so they could continue their pursuit after the main villain.
That's right. And I wish JDR's reposition had worked. That would have been hilarious.
Absolutely. Which, again, was a great example of using their full abilities, using some of the abilities in the game itself to the full advantage. And again, sometimes the dice cooperate, sometimes they don't. But it was a great tactical choice, and a creative one. That's not just roll the d20 and see if I hit, or see if I can
Yeah.
just move or whatever, right?
And they all made choices like that. They all made good choices. Every single one of them. Banda's decision to save Selival when she, there wasn't a reason to want to, but she, they handled that really well. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, if and when you ever get a chance to watch this episode, when Gwen playing as Briella jumps the railing and has the hover spell on, and I don't know if JD or if Mr. Parr remembered that, because Mr. Parr's eyes got huge. Briella's doing what? Briella's jumping where? Like, as the demon, the fight, all on the floor, everything is going crazy on the floor, and Briella just hops the railing. But again, that's why Briella wasn't in the sphere of the fireball, because Briella was still 20-25 feet up in the air with the hover spell going. But even Mr. Parr was not expecting Gwen's move to just hop the railing and to essentially expose Briella from the somewhat relative position of safety that they'd been at before.
Yeah, it was the participation of the players that really makes combats fun. It is, sometimes you end up in old school encounters or in modules where it's just another 10 hobgoblins. And that's the way, you get a block of text this much in an old school module where it's just another 10 hobgoblins, do the damage to them and they fall down. There's so much more potential in a combat when the players are creative.
Yeah.
When they've built their characters well, they know their characters, they make decisions that are tactical, even if they're suboptimal, if they're doing it for a reason. And even if the dice fail them, and it just makes combat dynamic. I really enjoy that aspect of the tactical combat and having to make decisions.
Yes.
Do we go after Valthorn, or do we tidy up what's threatening us in this room?
And I admit I was worried because Varen got tied up with the guard, and J. Dior then left Valthorn to go after the demonologist in the middle of the fight as well. And I'm like, oh, this is when it can go bad, because now they're suddenly splitting their focus. And I wasn't sure if that was going to work out in their favor, even though J. Dior probably was making the right choice. But even J. Dior's choice ended up with a second demon on the floor. So
yes.
it was, I was a little worried for a moment, but at the same time, they had to react in the moment to what the most pressing need was.
And ultimately, they made the right call.
Yes. And it didn't hurt that Banda made a pretty literally killer shot with the bow on the second floor, using the environment, using the advantage that Banda had to essentially neutralize one of the NPCs early on in the combat.
Yeah, that's right.
Really
yeah,
good.
it went really well, and they got some of the combatants out of the combat altogether, which is good. Just based on the work they'd done and the planning they'd done and the conversations in the middle of it. It was good.
And then going back to the morality play conversation right near the end of the encounter, as they had the enemy surrounded, and he played the haughty noble card of, oh, you caught me, better take me before the courts, better take me before the other nobles, better take me before society, of which I am better versed than you, and I have more influence than you, and I have more coin than you to spend, thinking that they would act the hero. But they immediately, the players, as well as their characters, had a really quick back and forth of, do we follow that path, or do we eliminate this threat, because we know that if we play it by his rules, it's not eliminating the threat. That threat will continue to exist again. Even as Stephen, as Toad, was arguing that no, we're not going to just murder somebody the moment they've put up their hands at our defenses, even though they attacked us at our home, hurt those we care about, seeks our death at every turn. Stephen, as Toad, was still trying to cling to Toad's morality in that moment, and I just really appreciated that, because it was it wasn't very long. It didn't take a lot of time to discuss. But and the players made their choice, which if you watch the episode, you'll see how the ending goes. But I like the fact that it wasn't just clear cut, and that it wasn't just we're going to take the path of least resistance and just and do the most efficient thing from a role playing game standpoint, as opposed to what would our characters think about this moment as well.
Yeah, no, and again, they made the right call. Valthorn would have been a nightmare to try to bring to justice. It was meant to be a tough decision, and I think they did at least consider it. But at the end of the day, they again made the right call.
And that's the challenge when we're running long and we're already over time and we're trying to wrap up this really important encounter and to not shortchange it, but at the same time try and sort of get to the climax of it so that we can sort of put a bit of a bow on this part of the story. I appreciated the fact that they didn't rush that decision and that there was at least a quick back and forth, and then it was everybody came to the same conclusion that yes, this is the most appropriate course of action to go. But there's a risk of that. The players can be tired and they can be just a little bit tired, a little bit grumpy, a little bit just kind of worn out from the focus on the tactical part of the gameplay. That's difficult to sometimes role play that moment with your full sort of enthusiasm and focus and make a decision that makes sense. So.
Yeah, no, it went well. I putting a bow on it's always tough when you're at the end of a session and it's run late but
Yes.
you don't want to just end with the end
That's
of the
right.
combat.
That's right.
So I took the liberty of a little bit of sum up time just to do that, to put the bow on the prelude. Rushed through it a little bit, but I think I don't know, I enjoyed the flow of that.
So I'll tax your tired brain just a little bit more as we wrap up this session of After the War. 6 preludes in, 7 sessions for 6 preludes.
3 preludes.
3 preludes. See, I'm tired as well.
Yeah.
do it a bit. Yeah, exactly. Right. 7 sessions for 3 preludes. But we're wrapping up that part now to finally get us to what our goal was at the start of this series of sort of mini adventures, is to get us ready for the start of the actual the Adventure Path series, Spore War, which is what the actual play is titled and what we're actually here to tell the story of, starting these characters at level 11 for a really high level, high consequences series of adventures. I guess I'll ask you just to summarize, how do you feel now that the preludes are finally in the bag and done? And how are you feeling now? And we've talked about this a few times, and I said I'm pretty sure at the very beginning of the After the War series, I said I would ask you this as a sort of get into that, if you felt ready now or felt more prepared. How are you feeling about the start of Spore War now that we're ready to actually get into the adventure itself?
Terrified. Honestly, it's a different sort of experience. Sorry, it's a different sort of experience when you have your own written stuff. Because the way I write material for our home game or any other type of gaming environment, when I'm creating the story, is very loose. I have key locations and personas and arcs and alternate NPCs to throw into the mix if things are awry. But you don't write a script. You can't. The player characters, once they hit your script, you end up wasting half your effort because they don't engage with some things and they engage with others. With an adventure path, it's always a bit different, and I tend to play it a little looser than it's written. Anyways, you have to. But it's a lot of for me. Actual play on camera is a new beast for me, and it's a new experience. So that's the part that gives me some anxiety. And we're all busy in our regular lives as well, so
That's right.
finding the time to become really fluid with fluent with the narrative that someone else has written takes some time, and there's always trade-offs. So yeah, I'm a little nervous about launching into the actual play. I'm comfortable with the first book, and hopefully the other side of it is we have to go through quickly to maintain the pace that we've set. We have to just hit the high notes, the key points, and rush through that the same way that we've rushed through 10 levels to get to level 11.
That's right.
But I'm still a bit anxious.
No, and that's understandable. But you just already pretty much answered, which was my follow-up question, which is, because you've been an audience member for actual plays, and now you're getting your opportunity to join the creative process for that. That was going to be my follow-up question, was to ask you how has your perception of actual plays changed now that you've been doing this experience so far, and we still have many more episodes and sessions to go. Your perception and will evolve absolutely as you get more experience and more time doing it. But I was just curious on your initial reaction, being on this side of the camera now. How has it changed your perception conversation of actual plays and what makes for an entertaining actual play, and what you think in terms of the effort and energy required to put out a good actual play.
Yeah, it's a lot. And when I see you working on the editing behind the scenes and all that sort of stuff, I recognize that you're carrying a lot of the weight here, um, in terms of the work that's required to put it together. But in terms of running it, I think the only serious difference between actual play and a home game is that if you have a bad session in the home game, the player characters, um, or sorry, the players are not going to, they're going to understand if you have a bad session, and they're the only ones who are going to experience it. And as long as the next one picks up better, it doesn't flaw the experience. But one of the anxieties I have is if I really flub a session and get the adventure path details wrong or something like that, or reveal something too early, or don't trickle in some information that's required, and the players go down the wrong path as a result, you've then got something in the can that, do you replace that? Can't really do that. It loses its authenticity.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be there as a marker of, well, this is the episode Matt screwed up.
And all the fan mail sort of coming in just to call them out.
I look forward to it. So there is that. I think that's the difference that I'm most alert to, and anxious about.
No, I appreciate you being candid about that, because that's just sort of part of why we're doing this After the War series, was to pull back the curtain a little bit and kind of expose a little bit of the trial and error and the thought process and the mechanics of running an actual play and producing it and editing it and so forth. And I think I may have mentioned this once before, but I'll mention it again just to kind of clarify. As I've been going through the editing process for these episodes so far, I had shared this with the players last week, I think, or before, as letting them know that we're at the time of this recording of After the War, we have not aired any of the first episodes yet. That's coming up very, very quickly now that we're going to actually start airing the episodes that we've already recorded up to this point. We wanted to have several in the bag so that we had a bit of lead time. We know this, we're recording over the summer, and there's going to be some breaks as real life comes into the schedule, and we won't be able to record week in and week out. So we wanted to make sure we had a good buffer of several episodes, because we want to stick to a weekly release schedule for that. But as part of my editing process for those episodes, is I've been doing something that I didn't even do on my previous series, Quadrilateral, which is I'm editing much more tightly for time, and I'm trying to cut out as much dead air and sort of outside the game moments. It's not, if there's good rules discussion, I'm not editing those things out. We want to share those with the audience so that they can see that mechanical part of it, and sharing more of Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered with the audience for those that haven't played it before or just want to understand a bit more what it's about. But any of the sort of the double checking, looking up something in the rules, checking the PDFs, double checking finding what I need on my sheet, and it takes me a few seconds, you setting up a tactical moment in the game, and there's just sometimes a bit of a pause, or you need to double check something on that. There's a lot of dead air and a lot of dead space, and you and I've talked about as consumers of actual plays and as audience members that, if they don't handle those well, it can really drag on and extend an episode to be much longer than it needs to be. And I had never really appreciated people saying that they won't watch or tune into actual plays that don't edit their episodes down. I thought, well, that seems a little bit judgmental and sort of dismissive of the time and effort they're putting in. But going through this process now on this side of it and improving my editing skills, I'm recognizing there's a ton of those moments in the game that if I can edit those out, will shorten the episodes just for the sake of time commitment for everybody involved, but makes for a much smoother. It just keeps the pace of it and keeps it snappy and keeps it moving along. So I'm really focusing much more on that this time around, and trying to do that for the benefit both of just the end product and the end video, so that it's as good as I can hopefully make it, but that it's hopefully entertaining for the audience, and we're not taking up a bunch of their time with dead air.
That's hugely beneficial and a huge amount of work. I'm very grateful that you're doing that. I know what's involved. That's a huge amount of time and effort. Thank you.
And as people enjoy the episodes, I've enjoyed the episodes with you. I've enjoyed the episodes perhaps 2 to 3 times during the recording, during the editing, and then usually a final edit and a final go over to make sure I didn't miss anything substantial or major errors that I didn't miss the first time around. So often I've gone through an episode 2 to 3 times, and sometimes even 4 times before it gets to final print and final ready for streaming and so forth, right?
I'm not sure I'm going to watch them once. It's so hard to watch yourself, right? Like that's...
Yeah. And that would be a great question if we get to the point where we're able to solicit some questions, hopefully from maybe the Dungeon Scrawlers community. For everybody that's watching, there should be a link in the description below to invite you to join the Dungeon Scrawlers Discord if you've got a bit more time in your life to join one more Discord community. It's a fantastic community where there's a ton of creatives, writers, artists, authors, all hanging out, and the community is not just focused on actual plays, it's focused on all the other projects and great things that the Dungeon Scrawlers founders are working on, but also things that others in the other creative pursuits that others in the community are doing as well. But if we can get to the point where we can solicit some questions from the audience in the future and answer those questions here on After the War, that would be a great question. I would like to hear from them to say is that something that matters to them, and is it something that they appreciate, and is it something that they that affects their choice to invest time in an actual play in the future?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm curious about the answer to that too.
Absolutely. Congratulations on completing your Prelude series for Spore War, the actual play. We have finally prepared the players and the characters and the audience for the setting and the sort of the emotional relationships and the attachment to their current location and circumstances. And now the adventure path will begin next week with the next episode of Spore War that we will air after the war has come up. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to seeing the adventure path itself come to life.
Me too. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Good stuff.
On top of everything else, it'll be fun.
Well, and it damn well better be, because that's like you said. Yeah. If I'm going to watch these episodes 3 times in a row, I better be having fun. At least one of those viewings, I better be the fun one. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody, thank you so much for taking some time to spend with us here during After the War. We really appreciate the time you give us. We hope you're enjoying the series, and we look forward to sharing more with you as each episode comes up in the future. It's going to be a great story, and by now, if you've stuck with us through the Preludes, you have seen the chemistry and the camaraderie and the collaboration of the players involved, and they are doing a phenomenal job, and they're all very talented. It's been a pleasure for me to watch them play together, and to see the fun and the joy that they have on their faces. It's evident every episode we have as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, and thanks for watching at work if you're at work.
That's right. One more time, my name is Jason Collins. I'm a freelance comic book writer, tabletop role-playing game designer, actual play producer, and streamer. You can find links to my work, the other actual plays that I have been involved in, and my fantasy comic Thistle on my link tree at digital_Collins.
And I'm Matt Seneschal, and I'm just glad you're watching. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.